Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on our Action and Insight webinar, Unlocking Productivity and How to Scale and Optimize Your Trades Business. I am Tony. I am a field marketing manager here at Simpro. I am a former SAG-AFTRA actor turned marketing professional. Been 6 years managing trade shows across various industries. Yes, I am the one that is out in front of our booth calling out your names. If you've been at any of our shows lately, I've probably called your name from across the aisle, asked you what you do, and gotten you to come and talk to us at the booth. I'm passionate about travel, fitness, and my golden retriever, Sydney, who I'm hoping does not bark during our webinar here. And again, thank you all so much for joining us. And I'm going to kick it over to David Mears and let him take it from here.
Welcome, everybody. As Tony said, my name is David Mears. I am the principal implementation consultant for North America. I've been working with Simpro for 6 years now. However, most of my career has been in the tech space, dealing with implementation, as well as change management, project management, data analysis. I've kind of run the gambit. I always joke with people, I've done everything but be a developer because I actually enjoy people. So I don't really super enjoy just sitting right behind a computer 24/7. All of that puts me in a unique position within the trades, learning all of this and being able to apply some of my skills within the Simpro platform and software. Our Action and Insight webinar is going to be about essentially productivity, where we're seeing these inefficiencies within our workflows, within the industry, what people are struggling with, and how we can take some actions, how we can do some things that'll help that. So we all know business, it's not just in our modern day society, business has always been fast paced. And with that, it's getting faster as technology advances and goes. And any small inefficiencies can lead to cost problems that we're going to run into. And it's not just cost as in revenue, people, resources, all of those things we run into. So this webinar is kind of designed around looking at what those core challenges are that are hindering us from being efficient and productive, and then finding some actionable strategies to streamline our processes, enhance collaboration, and hopefully maximize our outcomes. So kind of the quick agenda. First, we're going to delve into what those challenges are. We're going to see what some of those major challenges we have found across the industry are. We're going to take some strategies, or we'll talk about some strategies to help your operational efficiency, which is kind of that step one in the process. Then we'll talk about the role of technology in helping to create and drive what is step two, the productivity. Then we'll do some case studies. We'll have some best practices. But before we get into all that, I'm actually going to ask you a question. A question we are asking is, what are the biggest operational challenges your business faces today? And you can select more than one. So first one we have listed on there is our difficulty in managing critical business information across multiple software platforms. It could be limited visibility in the field team's performance, their job progress, the operations. It could be scheduling constraints. Could be lack of real-time profit and loss reporting, seeing how everything is going. Where do we stand at any given time on a job, on a week, on the month, on the business as a whole? Or excessive time spent on manual admin tasks, such as chasing invoices or reconciling our supplier accounts. We've dealt with these challenges within many businesses as I have gone through my implementations with customers, had sit downs with customers, etc. And we kind of generally find these four major areas tend to be the biggest things that we run into. So 84% of trade businesses tend to run into issues that are around resourcing. So thinking scheduling hiccups, whether that's because we are overstaffed, because we're understaffed. This leads to things like double booking jobs, or we're getting late to jobs because we didn't have enough to finish one job, the first job within time, and it's pushed all these other ones, or even rescheduling issues when it comes to our resources. Second, we find that 45% of businesses in the trades are running into what we kind of categorize as revenue issues. So this is whether it's invoicing on time, being able to invoice a job, knowing when to invoice and what to invoice and how much, as well as collecting and, as we used before, chasing down payments. I like to use the word tracking a bit more, but tracking, collecting those payments. Third prong that we run into of our issues, 68% of the trade businesses run into issues that tend to be around time management. administrative tasks that become tedious. We have to do the same thing over and over and over, and it just starts taking up extra time that we could be using for other things. This in turn, directly or indirectly, does lead to customer frustrations where we're having to repeat things for them, or they're having to repeat things because we have to repeat things. This repetition also slows down projects as a whole. If we have to do processes that take time over and over and over, it's just going to slow us down and weigh us down. Fourth one you'll see there, 66% of the trade businesses run into issues that we kind of classify as retention and growth issues. Business climate constantly up and down. So it's really hard year to year to gain more and more clients, and not only gain them, but retain. This can go for not only clients, but employees. So those retention and those growth/expansion issues. For the big things that we see that are inefficiencies that are created by operational processes or things going on in the operations department. We see what some of those issues are that we're running into, and we're trying to get ourselves to what we keep calling productivity. How are we being more productive to create a better business on a day-to-day? So in order to get to that point, though, we definitely want to define it. What are we aiming for? If we're just searching for a nebulous goal, we're never going to get to it. So we want to define what we're trying to get to. So here you'll see we put a practical definition. And productivity isn't about working harder. We've all done this before some days where you just, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to go at this, but not much more got done. You just wasted more time, or you were tired, or you were sweating, but we didn't do anything efficiently. So productivity isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter by leveraging the right tools and processes. If you've ever seen Simpro, and sometimes we have a tagline up there that says Simpro, work smarter, productivity. So how does Simpro fall into that? What do we do? What is kind of our crux that helps us help you be more productive? And kind of to sum it up, we try to provide an end-to-end workflow management in a centralized database. Those two components of it, the end-to-end workflow management and the centralized database, are really two big pieces of the tools that are going to help you be more productive, help you create some strategies to be more efficient and more productive in your day-to-day operations. So in reimagining your productivity, how do we use Simpro to do that? What is Simpro going to provide? It's going to create those efficiencies. It's going to create that productivity. So by building our productivity on our foundation of connected operations, so think of that singular database, it kind of provides, to be honest, a whole host of benefits, but we're going to hone in on these three right here. Because these three, if we remember back to the four main issues that we talked about, these three things right here are going to help with all four of those. So we're killing what, 4 birds, 3 stones? It's not bad. So the key principles we'll kind of focus on as we go through some of these next slides that you will see is simplifying workflows, making things easier, simpler, keep it simple. KISS, I won't say the last part of that word. The other, automate repetitive tasks. Anybody that's ever had to do admin work, had to do paperwork, we know repetitive tasks can be the bane of everyone's existence. Not only does it create inefficiencies, but it kind of tires you out as well. No one likes doing the same thing over and over. We lose that energy and that efficiency just from losing that. Then we turn that data into actionable insights. And those insights are going to help us grow, expand, find those revenue sources, make sure we're being efficient and productive in everything we do. As we go through these next couple slides, those are the things to kind of notice that we're doing and saying that Simpro is going to provide and help you with. But before we take a look at that, I want us to kind of look at this quote by Peter Drucker. He's actually an Australian American project management, change management, corporate management professor, and like businessman. He did a lot within this field. The quote that he always had that I kind of live by is, efficiency is doing things right. Productivity is doing the right things. We often are aiming for efficiency, and we do get it, but productivity is the next step that takes us over the top, and that's what we're aiming for. So some of the ways we're going to do that by utilizing Simpro and how it's going to hit some of those key principles. So on our white side of the board there, you'll notice we said centralized data. We talked about everything being in a centralized database. It gives you a lot of things, and you get one single source of truth. Within that, we're going to eliminate disconnected workflows. There's no more having to go to software A, B, C, D, E, F, and Z just so we can get a quote out the door. Notice we haven't even got to the rest of the steps of that process yet. All of this stuff is disconnected. I have to go to one source to get one bit of the puzzle, another source to get another bit of the puzzle. Anyone that has kids knows you're never going to get a single story going to like different kids. It's all going to change. So those different sources are going to give us different information. That's going to disconnect those workflows, and it creates time trying to connect all of those. It's going to ensure consistency. If everything is in one central source, it's the exact same data. If John in the field writes that the top was broken, we're all going to see that the top was broken. When we go to create our quotes, if we're all creating them out of the same system, we're going to have the same pricing. We're going to have those same markup restrictions that are going to be there, ensuring that down the road that P&L looks good. The wording that we're using on our quotes to fill them out for our scope of work, it's all going to be consistent. So it's coming from a consistent source, and we don't have to worry about my technician in the field using one terminology for an item, someone else using another, and now we're confusing everybody. And Agatha at the front desk has no idea what either of them are talking about. The other part of that is we're going to support collaboration between office and field. This one, the case in point that's written down there, lends very much to that supporting collaboration between office and field. Scheduling is a big piece of this puzzle. And now with everything being in one central location, it's going to start making that scheduling piece easier, run smoother, run faster. We can see where the holes are. When we have an emergency come in and we need to send a guy out there right now, we know where everybody is at. We know at what point during their jobs they are at. We know if we can move people around successfully and still accomplish our day. We also know if somebody finished a job early and now they have 2 extra hours. And guess what? I could pull that job from tomorrow and move it to today and immediately notify them. So we're having those communications. Or if a guy goes out in the field, realizes, this part is actually broken, we need to replace it, they can quickly get back to the office or look through their inventory to know, hey, we do have this, and it's actually on Billy's truck, and Billy's 2 miles away from me, as opposed to driving 20 miles back to the warehouse or going to supplier to buy a new one when we have some on hand. So that collaboration between office and field and creating those efficiencies. On our blue side, we'll see building smarter workflows. And this is one of the things I'm really kind of passionate about. Efficiencies and workflows. It's one of those things I watch companies do it, and like little efficiencies can create huge gains as you add them up. So a couple tips we have for improving those workflows and simplifying them with Simpro is one, use automation for routine tasks. I know that automation used to be the big word and then AI replaced it, but let's not forget about automation. Essentially, AI is just advanced automation of processes. So using that automation for routine tasks. So if every time your technician marks a job as complete, you need to be able to send a form off to that customer, why not automate it? All your tech has to do is hit send. The system gathers all the information, creates the form, and automatically emails it for you, saving your office time from having to go back through everything, collate it, gather it, put it all together, write it up in an email, and remembering to send it. Another piece of that puzzle is seamless communication between field teams, office staff, and customers. I've had clients, you actually see one that comes up a little later when we talk about the case studies. When a quote gets completed, there's about 8, 9 different communications that go out, not only between the team, but between their customers. Now, there's a seamless communication between all of these. Everyone can see that the communications were made, when responses are made, what information was sent out. And because they did the first part of that, automated it, we know it's being sent out. They don't have to question whether a customer has been contacted. They have. That third one, we set clear, measurable tasks for every job. So imagine every time you send a technician out to go fix widget 45, he has a list of the things he should do to make sure that widget 45 is up and functioning properly before he leaves that site. And that list is there, and they can check all of those boxes, and you can see them immediately when they've done with that job that they did go through those steps. You create measurable tasks for every job, and those tasks ensure consistency moving back over into our white side there. So pulling all of those components, those pieces together is part of what Simpro is aiming to do to help you out with your processes, create that efficiency, and then eventually using that and creating productivity by ensuring you're efficiently using the tool and not just efficiently using your processes. The last bit of that, when we talked about our key principles, was data. Big data. That was another word that was a hot topic for a while. Big data. Everyone's collecting data. But what are you doing with that data? Why is that data important? Why do we want that data to be consistent? Why do we want to make sure that everyone knows how to spell guarantee and they spelled guarantee properly within Simpro so that we can find anytime we use the word guarantee? So all of that data, when we put it in the system and we use it properly, it's going to provide these four kind of major highlights that you're going to see. So our objectivity and our accuracy. So data, it's going to provide an objective basis for our decision making, no longer going off vibes, no longer going off intuition or my gut feeling. I feel like it's going to rain today. We should cancel our jobs. We don't have to do that anymore. So data is going to help us. It creates this subjective bit of information, and that information becomes more accurate because we're not putting our own tint on it. That also makes it easier when we want to utilize that data for our evidence-based approach. It's no longer, I feel this way, so we should do this. It's the data shows, so this is what we should do. So the evidence-based approach of using that reliable data to inform our decisions. A good example I have within that, we had a customer that at some point wanted to kind of cut a manufacturer out when it came to their materials. Initially, it was a vibe. Hey, something's off. This manufacturer, it's not helping us. There's no benefit for us in using them in our processes. We can source it from somewhere else, etc. But by adding in Simpro and being able actually to go back and look at those jobs where they utilize that manufacturer, they use project tags within Simpro to note which jobs they utilize that manufacturer with. They were able to see that their margins were lower. They more often had to come back because the materials would break down on those jobs, etc. So they were able to create a business case with reliable data and take the bias out of that process for why they should take that manufacturer out of the process. Obviously, didn't go over with the manufacturer well, but when I can give you evidence-based data that shows we're making the right decision for us, it's really hard to argue with. Another piece of that puzzle is going to create transparency and accountability. Data is traceable. If it's in Simpro, we can see it. We can track it. I can use this data to recreate the path of the decisions that I am making. So we can backtrack and show you why something is going on. Makes it easier to defend your choices because that data is there, whether it's going back a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years. That data shows a track record and we can use that, and it creates that transparency. It also creates accountability because now I can use that data to back up what you have been doing, whether it's good or bad. Accountability can be a good thing. We always want to use it as a bad thing. But if accountability can show you that your technician is actually overperforming, that's a great accountability and a great way for him to back up that he is overperforming, that he feels confident in his job. It also helps us with customization and personalization. That data is going to be specific to you. It's not necessarily that it's a trend across the business as a whole. I know a lot of the stuff we're discussing are business trends, but you can see yourself in them, and the data you have proves that you fall into that trend. But how do you get out of those trends? What do you do? We use the data to figure that out. So it'll allow you to more granularly understand not only your customers, but your stakeholders, what their preferences are. It'll help you understand where your organization is going. Hey, do we need to shift into this particular lane? Did we find a niche where we're really good? Do we need to retrain our technicians in a certain area? Or do we have an opportunity to upskill our technicians in a certain area? It's going to make them better at that and help us step into another area for growth and expansion. Keywords that we've used before. So that customization and personalization is another reason why we want that data. And that's what Simpro is going to provide by giving you a centralized database. All of the data, instead of being in disparate softwares in someone's Excel sheet, it's all in Simpro to make that process easier and to be able to utilize that data. Why do we want to leverage our data and the technology? So utilizing Simpro, that's the technology we're going to refer to. Utilizing Simpro. Why do we want to use this? Well, for one, data is power. It'll help us focus in on how your data can target the outcomes that you want. So that data, and then defining, we did this earlier, we defined productivity. Once we define it, we can use that data to help us get to that point. The data is what's going to power us to that end result that we want. Also, during that process, it can be really easy to lose sight of the big picture. I know there's always a lot of data, and this is one of the backlashes that people always talk about. There's a lot of data. Why wouldn't I be getting lost in that data set? Why wouldn't I be using the wrong pieces of that data? But actually defining what your goal is and having that data can help you realize what bits and pieces of that data are important and which ones we don't need to pay attention to right now because they're making us lose sight of our bigger picture. Helps us prioritize what's important. Sometimes it also helps us hone in and see what is important versus what we thought was important. We may have decided we wanted to get to this goal, but as we're going through the data, it shows us a different picture and we can go, you know what? I think I did lose sight. I was aiming for A when we should have been aiming for C. Time is money. I don't know if I have to explain that concept. We all know time is money. But how do we tap into that data to create more time, which creates more money? So part of that is being able to use that data to find those areas of the boring bits where there's repetition, where there's things that are getting repeated that we can automate, or where there's things that bottleneck the process that we can automate to open up that bottleneck. Work smarter, not harder. Probably want to hear that at least one more time. Smarter, not harder. Again, with it being one centralized knowledge base as well, it saves that little bit of time of having clicked between tabs to go see another software to look for data that I'm looking for. When I have to go back and forth between Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel to find information, then I have to write it into a whole third document into my QuickBooks to create my invoice. That's a waste of time. It's a suck of time. And it takes away from the opportunity to put money back into our processes. And it can help insulate us against disruption. With the information creating time for us, we now have more time on hand to not only look ahead to see when disruptions are coming, but as we're putting in more money into the coffers, as we're streamlining the business and making sure we're there, disruptions aren't going to be as big of a hit. When we have those shaky revenue times and a job goes away, sometimes makes you panic. We used to breathe heavy sometimes. You start to sweat. But we're insulating ourselves against those disruptions by creating these processes that bring time back to the business. The time is what brings the money back to the business. Third prong of what data can help us do if we use the technology and that data properly is find our scalable opportunities. So you can set yourself up for growth. If we've noticed a bit ago, I kept mentioning you could expand into new areas. Well, having the data that shows you, hey, I know we do A, B, and C, and something that's really related to it is D, E, F. Would it be beneficial for us to jump into D, E, F? Or we have commercial and we have residential business, but it looks like the residential is not bringing enough in. What happens if we focus on just commercial? So being able to set yourself up for the growth. The data is also going to help you when it talk about growth. One of my favorite examples, a lot of the trades can be cyclical. We know that in the spring, HVAC is going to have a lot of work. As summer starts to approach, people suddenly remember, I don't know if my AC works. A lot of work comes in, but if we can use the data from the years past to predict when our business is going to uptick, we know when we can start looking for new technicians to bring on so that we can take on that growth and we don't have to pass up those jobs anymore and we don't have to sacrifice that ability to expand and grow. Future-proof your business part. Same thing there. We know busy seasons are coming, or we know around this time we get busier, or typically this is when so-and-so goes on vacation. Whatever it may be, we can use that data to plan ahead and future-proof for our business. It also strengthens your competitive advantage. If not by what I just said, you know busy season's coming up. Let me start looking for technicians in this space ahead of time. Let me start looking for another office admin because I know I'm about to hire 6 more technicians and we need 1 more body in a seat to help us out with that. It gives you that advantage because that data is there and now you know what's going on. You also now can look at your books or look at jobs and understand how much are you making on these jobs? How much are our manufacturers charging us for these? Can I use this to talk with my manufacturers and say, look, we bring this much business to you. If we can get a 5% discount, we can increase the amount of business that we're bringing to you over our competition. So giving you some of that advantage. And the last bit, data, it can connect people and that data. One of the things we often forget about having data in our system is that data is connected directly to people, our customers. We can utilize that data to hone in better with our customers, connect with them better. We all have gotten emails before about some marketing campaign that had nothing to do with us. We signed up for one thing one time on accident. Our wife or our husband purchased one thing. They took that scan and they accidentally hit the checkbox that says send me marketing stuff. And now we're getting all this information that has nothing to do with who we really are. That data, when we connect it to those people, can help us get better insights of who our customers are. What do they like? What are the things that are going to keep them and maintain them as customers so we can improve our retention? So that data being there is a part of the puzzle, but you also want to have the technology and the abilities to utilize that data that we're seeing. Within Simpro, how are we going to do that? The data is there. Behind the scenes is a centralized database, but what does it provide for you to be able to see that information? Of course, you could get into the back end there and just look at the straight up tables if you would really like to, but a lot of times people really like colors. I like colors. This report in like the top left, I look at every time. Open this page, boom, hi, I love it. There's colors. Those type of things, they're eye-popping, they catch, but that's the data behind the scenes. So our operations dashboard that we can see, hey, how is everything going today? I know we had a couple operations managers. Boom, there's an entire dashboard that's already built out within what we call BI reporting within Simpro that's designed around operations. So you could take that standardized one, or you could use it to create your own more personalized ones. We have a sales dashboard that sits in BI reporting as well. So that's going to deal with your sales team. What does our performance look like? How many quotes do we actually win? So what is our win percentage on a regular basis? Because that could be a big part of our growth. Hey, if we see segment A or B has a 20% win percentage, but segment E and F has a 70% win percentage, where am I going to focus? Probably going to aim at that 70, but the data will tell you that. We also have quality assurance information in our quality assurance dashboard in our BI reporting suite as well. So looking at those quotes, what's the P&L on those? How often are jobs being finished within the time frames that we say they should be? All of those type of things. How many jobs are actually done? Which ones are still out there? Think WIP reports. For those of us that know those, our work in progress report. Being able to go through that work in progress report and say, wait, why is this one still not finished? Why haven't we completed an invoice this when our guys in the field have been done for 2 weeks? Those type of things. So that's QA reporting can come across. And all of that is because when you're utilizing Simpro, utilizing the right tool, the right software, it's collecting that data and it's being able now to provide that data back to you in useful manners. Just having the data is good, efficient, but we want productivity. And the productivity comes with how you're reading that data, how you're using your technology to help you with that data. And that's what one of the pieces of the puzzle that Simpro provides. So now some real world examples. So we don't think I'm making all of this up. And this is one of the examples I mentioned a bit ago. Orion Security, they're a technically nationwide security company. They're active in 32 states. Yeah, it is 32 states, I believe. And before they came on to Simpro, they were looking to grow and expand. So they weren't in 32 states at that point. They were in some, but they weren't in 32. They were looking to grow, to expand. They do security for all types of things. When you think residential, commercial, they tend to go heavier now on that commercial side of things, where they're putting in security for businesses, for companies, for buildings, for apartment complexes, etc., whatever it may be. And as they were looking to expand in that, they kind of found that their processes weren't working really great. They used a lot of spreadsheets. They had old school project management style stuff. So spreadsheets, Microsoft Word, a whole lot of Post-it notes. I actually helped with this client, which is why I know there were a whole lot of Post-it notes. Information would be everywhere. So they were looking for a piece of software, a piece of technology to help them be more productive, be more efficient in these processes, to help them expand, to help them grow and better what they were doing on a day-to-day. So the things we went in and kind of brought to them was, one, we streamlined their operations across all the facets of their business. And the second piece there, you'll notice they didn't do all of it at once. They started with a phased implementation where we started with their service group. But in doing that, we allowed them to see how they could streamline the operations, not just within service, but within every group. And if they put them into Simpro and use it as a centralized database, it would streamline operations across the entire business. That phased approach, though, also helped them in understanding not just the system, but where some of their gaps were, where some of the things that they didn't realize were actual inefficiencies. We often find sometimes that like an inefficiency will be covered over by something. So we may actually have an inefficient process when it comes to how we do with projects, but because we do high-end projects and that money comes in, we're thinking everything's okay. But then we distill everything down into those smaller bite-sized pieces. We can see those holes in the road, those bumps that were slowing things down, that were actually creating an inefficiency. So we weren't creating as much money, time as we could have in the end of that process. So we worked our way up, we built, and then as they got to the top of that, you will notice in our blue, all that positive information, 25% revenue growth, 25% more jobs, 25% employee growth. One of those things we don't always think about. We get technology in, we can be efficient. Our employees are happier. So not only do they stay, we can bring more in to help out with the other work, and they're going to be happy too. And you might get a technician or two that goes off and talks to their friends and is like, yo, we've got some jobs and everything runs so smooth. It's great to work here. And we're picking up more and more people. So the ball just keeps rolling. Job estimates was a big one that we worked on. It used to take them days. And we've distilled that process down into hours. And it takes hours because now they're waiting for manufacturers to respond to them when they send them offers of, hey, we're about to do this big job. What can you do for me? Because we bring in this much business. So it's been distilled down. We have our 50% productivity improvement, and that's due to automating processes. We keep talking about that as one of those key pieces. Automation, it improves productivity. If I don't have to spend 2 hours collating papers and paper clipping them all together, folding them into thirds and putting them into an envelope and licking the envelope and putting it down and stamping it. If I don't spend 2 hours doing that, that's 2 hours I could do something else that's productive to the business. And of course, improve customer satisfaction. So that's case one that we had. We have another here, which is Schaefer Beacon Mechanical. They are actually based out of Connecticut. They do mechanical work, but think of cooling and heating systems, and then the plumbing that's related to those. That's what Schaefer Beacon specializes all over Connecticut. They've been doing it since 1890. So obviously, they're good. They know what they're doing. They've remained in business and they're successful at that. But they wanted to grow. They wanted to expand. They wanted their business to work better and to survive beyond 1890, 1990, 2090. And they needed some changes. Now, being a company from 1890, I'm guessing you understand what software they were using. It's called a pencil, the number 2, and a piece of paper. That was their biggest software. That is what they relied on. They were coming from paper for the most part still, utilizing paper to do a lot of things. So it created a lot of manual processes, a lot of gaps in their communication and how things were going, a lot of inconsistencies. So one of the big things we first did was come in again. You're going to see this word again, centralized database. We provided a centralized place for them to put all of that information. If everyone is writing notes and John puts his work order on the dashboard and goes driving, but it's good weather outside and he rolls that window down and that work order goes flying out the window along with the wrappers from 7-Eleven, we've lost that work order and that creates inefficiencies. It's also not in a centralized place, so we can't get that information back. But by centralizing it, all of their data was in one spot. We're able to automate their workflows, which in turn improve communication between office and the field staff. And these were just some of the immediate things we started to see as we were putting it in. So their techs, their jobs kind of became easier. They were able to see ahead of time what they were supposed to be doing that next day, or even in the morning, they could see what their day looked like for the whole day and prepare. So when they were coming into the office, when a tech would leave, the number of times they'd have to come back to the office because they didn't have parts that they could have if they knew ahead of time. Simple things like that. Their scheduling improved. Again, able to see it, be able to move people around, streamline business processes for them that paper just could not do. And then the back end of that was utilizing that data, and it made it easier for them to analyze what was profitable and look at their jobs, see in real time what was going on. Because sometimes we want to blame technicians for things, but let's say we know John is really good at doing one thing. I'm going to send him to more of those jobs if I can prove that he's good with that as opposed to a different type of job. We can create those efficiencies. We can analyze the profitability, not only of different jobs, but of our guys in the field, of our admin staff, everybody. With all of that, a company that had been established since 1890 all over Connecticut. People knew their name just by bringing in Simpro and utilizing our expertise, our software and technology. They had a 200% revenue growth, 75% faster job estimates. I don't know if we understand how much quicker 75% is. For those sports people, that'd be watching one quarter of basketball and we get everything out versus watching the whole game. Crazy. 60% profit margin increase, so a lot less leakage going out the back end on those jobs. And it wasn't just because of money, but time. 50% fewer scheduling hiccups, and then 40% more field techs. So again, another one that led to more hiring because they were utilizing everything properly. Now, all of that being said, if those were the only two companies we had, you still probably wouldn't believe us. But to give you an idea of who is using Simpro and what our ecosystem looks like, we actually do 1 million plus jobs per month are completed within Simpro. So 1 million plus, 1M plus. That's being done by over 500,000 users who are a part of 9,000 plus business customers that we have. So we have a large ecosystem and it is spread out. It is not just in the US. Our ecosystem consists of the US, Australia, UK, Ireland, and we have a couple in Singapore as well. Beyond just Simpro and having us be a centralized database, there's still information that you may want to pull in and out of other systems and provide into Simpro, or just other tweaks and stuff you may want to make within our system. And we have an ecosystem of 200 plus partners who help with that process of integrating our software with other components, of pulling data into the software or tweaking how some of that data presents, etc. within Simpro. List of some of our companies that we do work with. We'll see our Ryan one right there. So we just learned about them. But we also work with CBRE. If anybody has heard of them, if you haven't, you've probably seen their symbol somewhere and not realized it. ProGuard, AlarmQuest. Those are all other big companies that we work with. So you can see across all of the trades, we work with companies big and small to help improve, to help them grow, to help them reach productivity. There's even more. If I had time, we could have a whole webinar, day-long session about all this, but we don't. So we dwindled it down. We distilled this one down to some of those things that could help. But a couple other things that could provide that we won't go into detail about: live material pricing. Hey, I wonder how much that is. Boom, you know, real quick. Accounting software integration to make sure that P&L information shoots all the way down and we can look at the business as a whole. We have data feed, which can automate incoming information. So leads, quotes, jobs, even vendor invoices. So you send the PO out, they send it back to you, and the system has what's called our data feed, and it automatically reads that information, checks the prices, makes sure everything is good, receives those materials, and we move on. We have asset management and testing. You'll notice we put that one on there twice, but we have stock management. So you can keep track of how much inventory and everything you have at any given time, whether it's in the warehouse or the trucks. You have testing history, and you also have bespoke status codes. So we can tell when a job needs parts to be ordered, when a project needs parts versus when a service job needs parts to be ordered, when that service job requires a follow-up, or when that project has been stalled because of another contractor's work, whatever it may be. Partner enhancements, we kind of talked about that a bit already with that 200 plus partners that we have, but automated messaging, which is another thing that goes into that automation we're talking about. Complimentary BI monthly updates. So remember those BI reports I was talking about, those dashboards, our operations, our sales, and our quality assurance dashboards. Some of our partners can come in and enhance those and make them even better. We also have things like digital forms. So it automatically fills out the form in the way you need it. So if certain forms have to be in a particular format, your guys in the field can fill it out as if it's just a regular old test, but then the system automatically creates that PDF form. Video attachments, and we provide 24/6 support. I always tell everybody it's 24/6 because in most countries on Sunday, we have that day of rest. We like to rest too, just like our 24/7 quote unquote support would like to rest. So we give people that day. So for those that I hopefully have convinced that not only do I know a lot about those inefficiencies and how we go through that process in our implementation here, but how Simpro can help you with some of those inefficiencies and help you get to a point of being efficient and grow to a point of being productive. If we are looking for that, please do schedule a demo with us. That will go out to our sales team, and they will get that process rolling to get you set up with a meeting to have a demo of how the system does the things that I've said it does.
All right. Thank you so much, David. That was some really valuable information that generated some questions. You ready?
We will find out.
All right. So the first one comes from Tom. Tom says, we're still juggling spreadsheets and a bunch of different tools in the office. If we wanted to start simplifying things, where's the best place to begin?
To be honest, one of the best places, there's technically two places that are really good, and it kind of depends on the focus of your business. The main place I always tell everybody to focus on kind of centralizing their data and their information is going to be around scheduling. It really is the crux piece of how things get done, of how processes begin, how service gets done. If we can't schedule effectively, it doesn't matter the size of these projects that we're doing or how many we're trying to take on. If we can't schedule effectively, you're not going to have the results that you want. It can provide a lot of leeway in some other areas being a little inefficient until you're able to fix them, as long as we can get scheduling going. However, for project side of things, a lot of the things that I try to focus people on is getting the quoting bit of the process centralized. It creates a massive amount of efficiency when you can take down the amount of time it takes you to provide a quote to someone. If I have all my data in one centralized location, the pricing, the amount of time it takes to do things, the form and the format, the wording for all of my scopes, all of that, if I can centralize it, utilize it there, I can get those out quicker. And we all know higher number of volume is going to create more quotes coming or make more projects being accepted. Because even if our win rate doesn't improve, if our win rate is 20% and I send out 10 quotes, I'm going to get 2 of them. But if I can increase that and I send out 50 of them, I'm going to have 10. So that bit of improvement. So those are the two areas, depending on what your business kind of focuses on more.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Next question comes from Greg. Greg actually submitted 2 questions. I'll let you see the first one. Says, this is very relevant training. Thank you. I use Simpro daily since August 2024. Is there any training videos for users? My company is in the trade industry. Our techs lose and misplace tools negatively impacting their productivity. How could I use Simpro to help with this?
I'll start at the back end of that question there. The technicians and stuff of that nature, losing them. We have within Simpro what we call plant and equipment, where you can keep track of who's supposed to have what, and it gets checked out to them. So on their employee card, it lets you know Carlos has our 4-foot ladder. Well, Carlos used to have our 10-foot ladder. Carlos now has our 2 5-foot ladders. Easy to keep track of. And now we know Carlos has a 10-foot ladder. So that's keeping track of those pieces of equipment, knowing who has it, and creating that accountability. On the front end of that question, we do have some videos and stuff on our website at simprogroup.com. In the top right, there's an area that says resources. And within there is webinars and videos that we've recorded like this. This will probably end up being there as well. Things we've recorded like this, but there's also stuff in there about the software itself. So utilizing status codes, how to manage alerts. There's a series in there about Simpro Mobile and how to effectively use it or how to utilize it for your guys in the field. So there's a lot of videos on there that we can. Within that area as well, we actually provide free basic training courses within there that happen on a regular basis. So I believe it's like 2 times a week. We have a training on service workflow that you can go to, or a training on form builder that you can go to. And it's designed to be this generic one to get you in the door, to refresh your memory, etc. That's provided by our professional services team. So there's a multitude of resources that you can use to help you remember or improve your productivity with the system.
All right, great. Thank you. And then the next part of Greg's question ties into what you were talking about with rainy weather. He says, we are negatively impacted by rainy weather and scheduling becomes messy. How can rain percentage be used in Simpro? And how can tasks be entered in Simpro mobile app for techs to use on the job?
Gotcha. So the weather question is a tough one. However, on the very front page of Simpro, we actually have a little section in the top left that shows the weather for where you are. And that was the specific reason. The weather can impact a lot of jobs. So being able to see, all right, look, the weather outlook for today is we have a 60% chance of rain. We might want to start looking at what our backup plan is going to be. Unfortunately, there isn't like a singular like metric that it keeps track of on a day-to-day basis. So I can't look at the schedule and see over the next 5 days, this is what the weather's supposed to look like. But we do have that little widget that kind of sits there. And I usually kind of tell people if once you've got your scheduling within the system, it does become a lot easier often to shift things around because everything is digitized in there and it's a drag and drop process within Simpro. So you're not having to enter a bunch of numbers. You can literally click on those blocks, move them around, do your scheduled Tetris right there on the screen. And everything updates in real time, which is the other part of the thing that's great. It updates in real time for that day. Because if I have to play scheduled Tetris for the week, I don't want my technicians for the next 3 days getting alerts every time I change those two. They're going to lose it. And that's if they check those alerts. The other side of that, going back to the technicians with their alerts, them being in the field, not only can you add task or task templates. So say there's a series of 5 tasks that they always have to do on a particular style job. You can add that task template to the job from Simpro Premium, which is the desktop browser-based version. You can add that template in there and it automatically assigns it to that job. And you can assign it automatically to a particular technician that's on that job. But we've developed a new task module within Simpro Mobile that actually allows the guys in the field to better interact with those tasks. So from in a job, they can go in, look at the task, mark it as completed, etc. But the task module now allows them to kind of tell you percentages, to put different statuses to where that task lives, to reassign that task to somebody else. Because let's say he needs a new part, he may reassign a task to your procurement team that says, hey, I need a part ordered for this job. So they have that capability to communicate back with the office. So while in the job, it's kind of a one way the office is communicating to the technician. Task module allows that communication to be a two-way street now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Next question comes from Brandon. He asks, what report shows quoted time versus actual time for multiple jobs?
It's not a specific report that shows that bit of the puzzle. However, we have like the time itself. We have a couple reports that'll show you the difference between what was estimated on the job and what the actuals were. But the filters are going to change a couple of things. So I think what happens is it gets rid of like the hours one when you change one of the filters. And that's where you run into it. So there's reports that give you all that data. They just may not be all on like a singular page. But BI reporting, like I just talked about, allows you to create your own report. And I know you can do that in BI reporting because I've done it myself. Gone in and compared. This is what we quoted. This is what it was. But I need to see that across the last quarter for these jobs. And even broken it down by sales. That was me trying to figure out, and my fake company that doesn't really exist but exists in my head so that I can remember all of this stuff, which salesperson was over quoting jobs, which ones were under quoting jobs, so I could see better tracking in that manner as well. However, you do have WIP reports that can kind of show you where the job stands. So how many hours did we quote versus how many hours are left. We also have our P&L report, which will show you versus the estimates, what the actuals did as far as our profit and loss went, and it divides it into materials and resources. So you may not see the hours themselves, but you will see the value of those hours in those reports. Hopefully that answered the question or gave you a good place to start looking.
All right, great. Our next question comes from Chris. He says, I've been thinking about upgrading our systems, but it feels like a massive hassle. What's onboarding time frame and how long to get my team up and running?
To answer the first part of your question, yes, do it. That was the implied part. So within Simpro, the time frame for onboarding, our aim is to get everybody utilizing the system within a 90-day period. Now, when I say utilizing, that doesn't mean you're full scale using everything. As we talked about with that Orion example, that phased approach is what worked for them. So within that 90-day period, we kind of got their service department going. Then we use that time to build out everything else that was going. So the size of your company can impact what that total rollout looks like. Also, the amount of data that is coming from other sources. We don't aim to just be, you cut everything off and you're starting brand new when you get to Simpro. Bring your customers, bring your catalog, that information that you may have, those type of things. And we want to try to get those into the system so that can hinder that time as well as the complexity of the work that you are doing. Those could change those times. But for the most part, our average is somewhere around that 60 to 90-day mark is when we find a lot of our customers are utilizing the system in an efficient way in their day-to-day operations.
All right. Thank you, David. We're almost at time, but we'll try to fit a couple more questions in. Greg submitted another one. He said, if we accidentally delete a job in Simpro, is there a way to retrieve it?
There is. So Simpro has taken that into account. There's a couple ways to prevent that from happening. One, within our security groups, you can actually determine whether people even have the ability to delete a job. So you can prevent that accident by not giving certain people the ability to make that accident. The other is we have what we call delete versus archive in Simpro. And very often we set everything to archive. So archive takes things out of the active view of everything. So someone will think they deleted it, but they didn't. It's literally sitting in what our archives, and you can go back in there and reopen it. You can recreate it if you want. We also utilize those archives. We talk with people about quotes. If you build a quote out and then it gets accepted, when it gets accepted and converted, it technically archives. Sometimes you need to build the exact same quote again and just change the customer name. Those archives are there for that purpose as well. You can go in and go, hey, why don't I copy this archive report or quote? Let me change the customer, change a few words on here. Boom, I can send that out to them. So we get around that by utilizing the archive function way more than delete within Simpro. And we restrict who has access to delete. More often than not, there's probably one admin that has access to that delete option. And if for any reason that admin were to delete it, you could come back to our support team and chat with them about being able to recover that deleted item.
All right. And then Nick asks, would like to hear more about live material pricing and account software integration.
The long and short, essentially, if there's an integration with that particular manufacturer, you can see the pricing based upon doing push updates. You say, hey, how much is that widget right now? When you hit the button, it pulls back the real-time price. The ins and outs of that, as well as the accounting integration, though, would be better served, honestly, with a demo or talking directly with one of the salespeople so they can spin up a site, or not spin up a site, but show you a demo site to see that information and what does push and pull between not only the accounting integration, but between the live pricing. It's an integration as well. So seeing it is a little easier than trying to explain each little piece of that puzzle, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you, David. And unfortunately, everyone, we are out of time. If you did submit a question that was not answered, we will have somebody email you directly. And as we mentioned, feel free, please contact us for a detailed introduction to Simpro. We would love to get you a demo and let you take a look at the software for yourself. And again, thank you so much, David. Really great information, and hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.